am wonderful. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well.
Good, good.
I'm honored to have you on Preparedness Talk. And,
Oh, the honor is mine. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited on a Friday night after work. This is good.
yeah, for sure. I'm just getting off. Uh, but yeah, no. When I was looking at your content and what you're doing, and with the women especially, I was like, man, I have to get her on the show and really talk about, women's defense, women's safety, family
Mhm.
safety, because that's
Yes.
important to us here at Prepare Mentality, is the family as a whole, but we don't really touch on women and how they can protect themselves. Um, so, Joy, how did you get started in firearms?
So interesting story. I actually was not a fan of firearms, especially when my children were little. I was a blade lady, so I like my swords and my knives and that kind of thing. But
Mhm.
my husband was in the military. He's a Marine Corps vet. And so he always talked about having a gun in the house. And my whole thing was I didn't want guns in the house with the kids. So when my kids got older, I said to him one day, I want to go and learn how to shoot. I just want to try it. I didn't think I'd like it. I just wanted to check it off my list. So
Mhm.
he took me to one of the best. My husband did very well. He understood he probably was not the best person to teach me. And he took me to a class with Chris Tilley, who is a competitive shooter, top shot, great guy. I think he represents and works with Bull Armory. He took me there first. He was my very first instructor. And so the first time he pulled the trigger, it scared the bejesus out of me. But the first time I pulled the trigger, I was addicted from then. And that was the end
Wow.
of 2016.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, being, a veteran myself, getting my wife into firearms, it was the first introduction to her, because I was in the military and she saw what I did, and then I introduced her, to the firearms industry, and so yeah, I mean that's awesome to have, that marriage where you can both feel safe and secure in knowing what you guys
Yes.
are doing when protecting yourself. So what's going on with, E3 and the other women's organization that you have? Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So E3 Personal Defense is the business that I started. Talked to my husband, and he said, well, go ahead and start the business so you can support this gun habit that you've developed. And basically, long story short, my husband and I are both pastors. We've been pastoring for quite a few years now. And when
Mhm.
I started getting into firearms, my first thought was, man, I know so many people who need this, but the truth of the matter is they either can't afford it or they
Right.
don't have access to the education. So we started E3 with churches and civic organizations to basically make those opportunities possible for them at a low cost. And we've really enjoyed that ever since. And then, of course, we got through time and realized that I don't see any people that look like me. Whenever I go
Mhm.
to a competition or a class, there are always men. They never have any women at all, never any people of color. And so I realized we got to do something for these ladies,
Yeah.
especially ladies from minority communities. And that's where we launched Inner Peace in 2020.
Wow. Wow. That what a journey. I
Yes,
mean,
it's been a lot.
I'm sure there's a whole lot packed into just that. Um,
Mhm.
what was your first introduction in teaching? Like how you got started in teaching and training? Were there certain certificates that you got at first, or was it just training with your husband?
Absolutely. So I love to teach,
Mhm.
anyway, but I basically just started taking classes because I wanted to learn.
Okay.
And that was part of the wake up call for me, the amount of investment that was needed
Mhm.
just to get to a place where I was comfortable pulling the trigger. And to be honest, it scared me because I knew so many trainers who hadn't even taken that much education or
Right.
practiced that much. So many of the trainers that I know even now take one, maybe two classes, and then
Wow.
they're instructors. And
Hmm.
so, I found myself on the other side of 6 or 7 training classes and, programs. And I thought, okay, I kind of like this and I'm a little bit good at it. So maybe I can teach somebody. And then from there, I just continue to get training. And I will say this. It is my goal every year to take at least 4 formal courses where I am pushing myself and learning from someone who's better than me. That's
Yeah.
very, very important. And I encourage everybody to do that. Even whether you're going to teach a class or not, it's
Hmm.
important to get that continued learning.
Yeah, that's awesome. That, you know, when people first start out in firearms, even taking a class, you have that sense of, they're scared, or they don't know, they're not sure, they don't know what to do,
Mhm.
or they're hesitant. Um, and especially, with women not, being able to, adventure into that area. What was your I guess your training process in gearing them into firearms at first? Like, was there, you know, you set them down and said, "Hey, this is how this works," and how did you do that?
Great question. So I don't want to get you canceled, but I'm going to make a
Yeah,
generalization here.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
In general, men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti. I teach this all the time
I've
with
heard that.
marriage
Yeah.
counseling, right? So men have the ability to kind of sit, if you will, in one thought box.
Mm,
So you can give, in many cases, a gentleman a gun and say, pull the trigger, and he's happy.
right.
Women are not that way for the most part, always with exceptions. We tend to want to understand first. So I find that if I take time to sit a student down and talk them through the operation of the handgun, the safety, show them, everything that there is to know that they can absorb at that one time and answer all their questions. By the
Right.
time they get on the range,
Yeah.
they already feel very comfortable. They're already very solid in their understanding. They're confident that they can handle this. I will say, too, for anyone else who might be interested in helping more women, I personally have found that using lasers before you use live fire is a lifesaver. It
Okay.
really helps them to understand that once you get on the range, the only difference is going to be a little bit of recoil.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Was there a difference? Do you travel and teach women all over, or is it in certain one location?
Most of the time, it's right here in North Carolina. I love to travel, but I don't get as much of a chance because of my day job. I have a
Right. Right.
demanding career, which I love,
Yeah.
but I do travel occasionally and love to do that when I'm able.
That's awesome. So, I mean, the reason I asked that is because I know, down south, there's a different perspective on firearms. And up north, I'm from New Jersey, it's a whole totally
Ah,
different perspective on firearms. Yeah. And so I'm a little curious of how, you were able to face those challenges being African American, being a woman, um, and also being a pastor.
mhm. To be honest, I think that made it easier for me.
Okay.
Um, in the South, I'm just kind of the minority. This was not normal until 2020, honestly. In the state of North Carolina, I could not name two other Black female firearm instructors just 2 years ago. And now I can probably name 14.
Wow.
So that turned around to kind of, be a blessing, to be honest with you, because everybody was looking for someone who looked like them. At
Right.
some point, you don't want to have to drive down a long dirt road past Confederate flags to take a class, you know.
Right.
So you want to, representation matters,
Mhm.
then we just have to be honest about that. We want to feel more comfortable, and that's going to happen when we're around people who share our experiences and our culture.
Right. Wow. I mean, that's terrific because you normally don't hear this kind of thing.
Yeah.
You normally don't have your type in this industry. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it's men. A lot of times it's our other counterparts. And so, being a pastor, how do you, I guess, intermingle your firearms world with your ministry?
Well, I teach the same thing outside of church that I do inside of church.
Uh,
I don't preach fear, but I do believe in preparation. And I just try to explain to people, take the gun out of your mind for a moment. That's just a tool. Think about your home. We all have a fire extinguisher. We
mhm.
all have, I hope, an escape plan in case something happens, but we don't live every day in fear that our home is going to burn down, right?
Mhm.
There's that balance. And so I want people to enjoy the world of firearms. We have sports that we have, people just for hobbies. Some people want to collect. Learn about those things and be prepared should something happen, but never live in fear that that thing is going to happen to you.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, fear is definitely, a killer. It can definitely limit you from your possibilities and what you
Yes.
can ultimately challenge yourself and be able to take on those goals that you want. And having a ministry and being a pastor, is there a certain way that you or do you have women in your congregation that would like to take classes or have taken classes or have come up to you and say, hey, I'm interested in this? How does that dynamic work?
Quite a few. I
Oh,
think initially there was some hesitation,
yeah,
just because people are kind of trying to figure out how does this fit into my world.
right.
But quite a few of them, I would say most of the ladies that I've mentored or pastored have taken some sort of self-defense or firearms class at this point, and they all enjoy it. Some of them take one class and walk away.
Mm, yeah.
And then others have decided, hey, this is something I really want to pursue and grow in.
Wow, that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
because normally, when you go to churches, when you go to congregations, I mean, even the thought of firearms, I mean, can really, damper the crowd, because there's just a certain mindset that they have,
Mhm.
and so introducing them into this world gently. But knowing that there's a purpose for it, there's a reason behind it, and it's not just we're out here, go-getters trying to uh, take offense and take arms against bad enemies. It's just that we're trying to protect our families, protect ourselves, and protect each other at the end of the day. So what do you
Absolutely.
suggest people when they're first introduced to firearms, the first steps that you think that they should make when they want to get into having or owning a firearm?
Very first step, learn about the safety. Do your research. You don't need a firearm physically to get online to learn about the basic safety rules, and then take a course with a certified instructor. Vet that instructor.
Yeah.
Instructors come a dime a dozen, so vet the instructor. Make sure they're insured. Make sure they can do what they're teaching you how to do. Make sure that they have, someone to account for them, someone who's mentored them. You should be able to see their pedigree, right? And see where they've come from and who has instructed them. And then once you find someone that you can trust, someone who is safe, and I can't stress that enough, take some courses with some people who are not going to let you hurt yourself or anybody else,
Mhm.
and continue to take courses until you are comfortable. Don't think that just because some other person took this one course and they were fine,
Right.
that you should be fine. Continue taking courses until you're comfortable, and then, only then, in my opinion, should you purchase a firearm. Never purchase one that you haven't shot physically yourself, and do not purchase it until you can also purchase the appropriate storage equipment, whether that's a safe or a lockbox. Do not purchase that gun until you have the tools to keep it inaccessible to anybody who should not have access.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, that's power packed right there,
Yes.
with great safety information, because a lot of people just forget safety, and just think, this mechanism is going to fire itself, but you need that person to fire it. And
Yes.
so are there certain levels to your classes, beginner, middle, high end? Do you do that type of curriculum with your classes?
Actually, not so much. Most of my classes are geared toward newer shooters, and then we do offer some intermediate courses and a lot of community service driven seminars.
Okay.
I tend to love to teach new shooters, and I'll be honest, I'm learning myself.
Yeah.
And so I am not anyone to teach advanced tactical courses or anything like that. Maybe one day.
Right.
But right now, I stay in my lane. I'm really good at
Right.
teaching beginners and intermediate shooters, and that's where I'm qualified to be right now.
Okay. Nice. I mean, everybody needs that. I mean, the
Yes.
first steps into getting into firearms is, what you said,
Mhm.
and just diving in. I mean,
Yes.
most people just don't know how to dive in. Sometimes you got to push them a little bit, yeah, to get in there. But so as everything, you know, all the current events that are going on now in the world, um, and we see the news, we see different disasters, we see crime rate is going up. What are your thoughts on protecting ourselves in the midst of evil, in the midst of a high crime environment, in the major cities? If we're going to the grocery store, just what are your thoughts, your initial thoughts on everything that's going on?
My first thought would be don't panic. I will say that as a culture, just thinking back to my own family, for generations, my family has become accustomed to dealing with drama dealing with violence, and dealing with all sorts of things. When we panic, we lose our sense of self and we lose our common sense as well. So my first thought is just don't panic. You know, continue to be led by the love that you have for your family, the love that you have for God, the love that you have for self. Use common sense. If you cannot protect yourself with a bat, don't go and get a gun. A gun is not going to help you if you don't have appropriate training. You're just going to enable whoever might be attacking you to have another weapon. So that's my first thing. You know, don't be afraid. Don't panic. Use common sense ways to protect yourself. And that starts with, honestly, just situational awareness. You know, get your head out of your phone. You know, pay attention to what's going on. Stop putting 20 bags on your arms when you go to the grocery store. You can take a little more time and carry 2 bags at a time. That's really where it starts, because if you don't know how to protect yourself mentally, no tool is going to save you. And that's all a gun is. It is a tool. It is not a savior by any means.
That's good. I wish I wrote this down, because you giving me points right here. And having that situational awareness, I mean, we talk about this a lot here on Prepare Mentality, is key, because you want to know what's going on. You want to know your surroundings. You want to know what other people are doing, what they're wearing, you know, where they're going in vicinity of you, if you're in your vehicle. These type of things are key, and I think a lot of people don't get that concept because they're stuck in, you know, that angle of in their phone, and we have a bunch of distractions and everything in our hands to distract us. And so with that being said, do you think, well, put it this way, at what age do you think someone should be introduced to firearms?
That's a great question. Depends on the person.
Okay.
I have seen 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds even, one 3-year-old that was ready to learn gun safety. And surprisingly to some, children are some of the best students. If you teach them early, they just get it, right? And they listen and they understand. So it really depends on the person. But I've seen people as young as 3 who are ready. It just depends on the child. And it also depends on, again, having a good instructor that's going to teach that child safety first and also help them to understand this is a tool. I know people, oh my goodness, growing up, my grandfather would take us out, you know, hunting, and I would see people in other cultures who would have their children out hunting. They were never intimidated by that gun because they understood it was a tool. This is how we eat, or this is how we protect ourselves. It's not a toy. Children understand that about kitchen knives, but for some reason or another, we don't believe they'll get it with the gun. So 3 years old, depending on how they listen, and up.
Okay. And you brought up another point about our culture. I mean, there's definitely a stigma with firearms because, you know, most of our men are incarcerated, the poverty level, and just firearms in general with policies and laws. So what are your thoughts on African Americans taking on firearms and it being this, not a global phenomenon, but it seems like because of media, because of social media, because of, you know, all these outlets, more people of color are getting involved. What are your thoughts about that?
I think a lot of it is education, and unfortunately the rest of it is fear, right? But we have to be careful that we don't allow the same tools to keep us from exercising our rights. And a lot of times that has been fear in the past. It's also been a lot of laws. So a lot of times laws don't necessarily have color attached to them, but they always have money attached to them. And unfortunately in this country, money dictates in many ways culture, and that translates to color sometimes. So people need to understand the laws that are being passed. They also need to understand something that might be eye-opening to some. When it comes to firearms, there's almost nothing illegal in this country. There are some things you need a tax stamp for, and some of those tax stamps are $40,000 and up. Well, guess who can't afford those, right? So even those types of laws and restrictions ultimately are going to boil down to different cultures. And unfortunately, in this country, we're going to start seeing a division by color as that breakdown occurs. So we need to be educated. We need to understand the laws that are being put in place and understand that it's not always about a person trying to oppress you. It's about a system. Right? And we're dealing with a system that has been broken for a long time. If we don't get educated and vote correctly and make our voices heard, then we're going to continue to see our young men, our sons going to jail with a firearm because they don't understand or know how to get it correctly, or they don't have an opportunity because they don't have the money. So that's in my opinion, that's the real underlying factor is we've got to deal with the system and get educated. And that way we can continue to grow.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that was really good. Thank you. And this makes me appreciate you and others who do this, who do introduce firearms to the African American community, to people of color, so we can be in the know and understand how to use these tools to our advantage, and not have them hinder us from our success in our culture and our values and our families, but have it as a safety tool and have it, as something that we can, all represent together and know the value of it and respect it. Because I think the respect part of the tool is not there in a lot of our communities. But I mean, again, I appreciate you for doing what you do and training people and training women especially, and getting them comfortable and familiar with firearms. So I'm going to hold it right there because we can talk, all night on this, but I'm sure I'm going to have you on again. But what are some updates on what you're doing now, your company, anything that you want to promote out there?
Absolutely. So we are based, of course, in Raleigh, North Carolina. And E3 Personal Defense is always hosting all types of training. But if I may, I just want to take a moment. I like to give honor where honor is due. And there are just a few people that I just want to acknowledge that will also help us all to work together. Of course, our Women's Gun Club, Inner Peace. Please check it out, ladies. Join us if you'd like. But also, I would really like to encourage everyone, if you're not aware of the National African American Gun Association, great things are happening. Great things are happening. If you're in the Triangle area, the Triangle NC Gun Club is the Raleigh Triangle chapter for NAGA. Please come and join us. These guys, mostly guys, but some of the ladies, we're coming. They know their stuff, and there is a heart for community, a heart for education. Also, if you are in the Raleigh area, please come by Eagle One Supply, 4410 Craftsman Drive in Raleigh. This is a range that has embraced E3 Personal Defense. They partnered with Inner Peace. They've embraced the National African American Gun Association. They're just very open to community. So we really want to support Eagle One. If you're ever in the area, go there to shoot. Tell them Joy sent you. All people who are making moves in education, and I just want to say to all of them, thank you for their support, because it helps people like me to do what we need to do as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you, Joy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you guys who are online and are going to see this after the fact, definitely go to the channels that she's on Instagram, Facebook, and go to her websites. But all her information will be under this post to get in contact with her and her companies. But again, thank you, Joy, for joining us on Preparedness Talk. And we will have to do this again because there's a whole bunch of things going on in the world. So I want to thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You be blessed and stay safe.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.